Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
All right. Welcome and good morning to TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio, and you are in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Now, if you would like to get in contact with the show, you can do so by calling 1-877-932-9766, and we will do our best to get you on, or you can Gmail me with your questions at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and we will try to read them or vet them as much as we possibly can, because we don't always know who you are. And some people can do or have tried to do some damage, so we try to be careful about that. We're not going to catch everything, but we will make an attempt to. Let's see here. Got so much to talk about today. Mr. Fuller is on the line from Washington. Thank you, Galen, from Washington, D.C., and we thank him. Usually we ask Mr. Fuller about what's been going on in his world, but today, in my studies during the week, I came across several questions, and one of the questions that I was asked to ask you, Mr. Fuller, and first of all, how are you?
I'm still learning.
All righty. Good. One of the questions I was asked to ask you was, I think it was Monday, the Mitsubishi Corporation of Japan apologized to the state of Israel for the use of people during the Holocaust. And a representative from the nation, or rather from the state of Israel, accepted the apology. And of course, I don't know what that means and all the ramifications. But what it did, the action got us to thinking about what if, or do you think, if the U.S. government, the government of the United States, apologized to people of color, in particular African Americans, for the atrocities committed to them, what would that mean in a compensatory sense?
Well, people can ask for an apology, but I always say it's three things any person should never ask for. And these three things are never ask for an apology, never ask for love, and never ask for respect. Under any circumstance, ever in your existence, regardless of what the circumstance is. Okay. Never ask any person to give you an apology, to give you love, or to give you respect for any reason. And the logic is, if you ask for an apology isn't worth anything if you have to ask for it. An apology has some merit if a person walks up to you and says, I want to apologize for the way that I talked to you yesterday. It preyed on my mind last night, and so I just want to let you know that the things that I said to you yesterday, I shouldn't say it. I evaluated our conversation yesterday, and I said things that I shouldn't have said, or I think that I said things that I shouldn't have said, and I just want to apologize. Now, that is the way the procedure should be. Now, That takes care of apologies. Love, if you ask somebody for love, I mean, it's the same thing. It's something, you ask somebody to love, please love me. Tell me that you love me. There's an old song that says, I told you that I love you, now get out. See, so it's the same frame of reference. Doesn't mean anything if you've got to ask for it.
If you have to ask for it.
Yes.
What the group was saying, not necessarily that that we or people of color would ask for an apology, but they were trying to get at what would it mean, or does it mean anything, if the government of the so-called United States apologized for the mistreatment of people of color, and what ramifications would that have in the black community? Not that they'd asked for it, but the government actually acknowledged that there were some things that have been done wrong ever since this particular government was established over 200 years ago.
Well, I wouldn't even approach it that way. If I was involved in it at all, I would say I want compensation.
Yes.
That's the word.
Yes.
I want compensation for the existence of the most powerful government that this world has ever seen. And the name of that government is not the United States. That's some kind of abstraction. I mean, I'm talking about something that's hardcore. And I'm talking about what is the name of that government that should compensate Neely Fuller. The name of that government is the system of white supremacy, which is an ongoing system right now. There's no such thing as in the past. I mean, unless you consider just a second ago a past, a split second, because it's present.
Okay.
That government is still functioning. And I want compensation for the conduct of that government.
Right.
Now, that would mean correct everything that's going on right now that shouldn't be going on.
Absolutely.
That's the way to look at it.
Right.
We're not talking about any past. I mean, unless you say the past is just 1 second ago, now that's the past. Or the past is also the present, and that's also the past. So we're talking about compensation. In other words, replace this system that you have in place right now with a system of justice.
Yes.
What the system we have now is the system of white supremacy.
Okay.
That's the only government on this planet that counts.
Okay. All right. And then also in the headlines, and then we can go ahead on. One of the issues that was brought up, people of color have been killed in Texas, Alabama, even here in Ohio, in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then I discovered as I was coming in that a Native American was killed on a reservation in Colorado. That story was by Simon Moya Smith of the Indian Country Today Media Network.com reported that story. That was what's going on. And then a huge tax break for the wealthy. The GOP passed a massive tax break for the millionaires and billionaires. And this was according to MSNBC, reported by Steve Bren. That's to give you a source. It was voted 240 to 179, Republican 240, Democrat 179. All the breaks going to them. These were some subjects that were in the news. You care to address any of that?
No, I haven't heard that. Or know the details of it. But within the system, I always address everything within the system of white supremacy.
Correct.
Because I said that's where the real power is. Those white people who are on the planet, not all, maybe not most, but those white people who have adopted the system of white supremacy as a viable form, a constructive form in their minds of government, of mistreating people based on color, dominating and mistreating people based on color. So these people are everywhere, all over the globe. I mean, as individual persons, that's what it is. And they believe in this, and they practice what they believe in. And they are the most successful practitioners of a philosophy, a political and a religious philosophy, based on mistreatment of people based on color, that have ever existed. They're the most powerful people that have ever appeared on this earth. So therefore, whatever they do, on, if they're on some school board or whatever that is, I mean, they're the most powerful people there. Nobody's more powerful than they are. So whatever decisions they're making, wherever they happen to be, the only question is it something that's going to help people of color, non-white people, black people, or is it going to hurt them? Oh. That's the only issue.
That's the only
I don't
issue.
care anywhere on this planet where anybody is having a conference right now,
okay,
or anybody is having or talking about something, even on a bus stop. Is this going to help to solve the race problem, or is it not?
Okay.
It's one or the other. Look at everything within that frame of reference. Mm-hmm. Everything, without exception. Is this going to help this conversation that we're having? If it's going to help to solve the race problem, is this going to directly and indirectly going to help to solve it? Mm-hmm. What we call this race problem, this problem of racism against people of color.
Okay. We had as a matter of fact, a brother wrote to the station, Brother Khalid, I guess that's his name, and he indicated to me, and he wanted me to emanate to you that he really appreciates the program, and this is what he said. He said, quote, that you have saved his life by the things that you have him being exposed to, and he was very, very very gracious. He left his phone number. I called him and we talked for a little while on yesterday. He said you helped open up his mind to a lot of the things that have been going on, and he really appreciated it. So in that respect, the work that you've done, and he mentioned the fact that we discussed this over the air and it's heard around the world. He was so appreciative of it, and he, as a matter of fact, has turned on other people, to what's going on as opposed to what he hears across the other media. So on behalf of you, even though you weren't there, I thanked him for his comment, and he appreciated it. And and I'd like to say to all the listeners that we take it all, whether it's a criticism or all. We're not perfect. We try to get better. And compliments, we take those too. But it doesn't matter, whatever it is, because we want to get better in exposing the truth. I got a Gmail from Brother Farad, and this is what he says, Mr. Fuller. He says, "Good morning. Suspected racists and some black people in this modern time is stating that the cause of problems that plague black people are out of wedlock offspring and bad parenting, not racism. Is this statement in any way credible?"
Well, it's something to think about, but and many people have discussions about it all down through the years, as far back as I can remember. But then, when I joined the discussion in what I've written in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, I say, well, is there, if there are what you call family problems or parenting, as they call it, and all like that, well, let's look at the words we are using, and then let's decipher those words and see what they mean within the context of the system of white supremacy, and see if these are the genesis of black people's problems. In other words, are black people doing parenting correctly? And is it their fault? If they are not, primarily. And how did that come about if they are not the correct type of parents that they should be? Well, now, according to the logic, and I always say don't follow people, follow logic. Logic came with the universe. Well, now, if there are black people who are not doing what you call parenting, okay, so let's look at the word parenting. What do you mean by that? Well, you mean doing all the things to nurture your offspring. That's what parenting is usually thought about. In a nurturing meaning, in a constructive manner. Everything that it takes to make a person, a child, from birth and prior to birth, grow into an environment that is compatible with everything that is constructive.
Yes, sir.
So the answer is No.
No.
Black people are not doing that kind of parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then it comes down to another question. Well, why not?
Why not?
First of all, is because black people are not parents. That's number one. Because you can't not be anybody's parent when you're a prisoner of war yourself.
You're listening to the Compensatory Concept, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. That is radio the way it should be heard. You're listening with our good man, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And you can get that by going to producejustice.com. And on the screen will be all the details on how you can get his book. And also there's a word guide for a purpose also that will help you understand words. And you can get that all from producejustice.com. Okay. Okay, now go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Yes. The black people of this planet are prisoners of war. Now, prisoners have restrictions. There are only so many things that a prisoner can do. And anyone who is a prisoner of war cannot be a parent of anybody. And we are in a war. The war between those who believe in white supremacy and those who don't. And so far, the people who are the victims in that war, which are the non-white people of this planet, are in prison. And so, therefore, they are not qualified to be anybody's parent. Mm-hmm. None of them. Not one. Why? Because all decisions are made by the white supremacists, by the wardens of the prison. And so everybody who is a warden in the prison of white supremacy, first of all, has to be white. You cannot be black on this planet and be anybody's parent. You're in a childlike position yourself. You're completely dependent on what the white supremacists determine is going to be your fate, including whether or not you're going to breathe. Right now, you find black people who are called parents. They say that they are their children. We have our children with us. And what are they doing? They're straggling across deserts, trying to find what? Which way did the white people go? Oh, we don't have nothing. Oh, we are starving. Oh, we don't have medicine. Oh, we are eaten up with disease called Ebola and AIDS. Where are the white people? Please tell us, which way did they go? I don't see anything around me but just a whole bunch of starving black people, howling black people shooting at us with AK-47s with a little bit of food that I happen to get. Where did the white people go? Please deliver us. Let us catch up with them. Let us go across this desert. Let us go across this ocean. My babies are falling in the water, but I mean, try to save one or two of them so we can go where our real parents are, where the people who can take care of us. We have nothing. Now, when you look at it just that way, because that's the only way to look at it, then you can answer the question.
Okay.
Who are the real parents?
Who are the real parents? Okay. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call if you'd like to get in on the discussion. Or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and I will try to read your question. Do you have any comment about Miss Bland, who was killed in Texas, or have you seen the video of her? She was killed in her jail cell, but she was stopped, I believe, and they showed the video on the news outlets of she was in her car, and I guess, I don't know if the officer didn't like the way she was smoking a cigarette or what, but anyway, he stopped her, and she didn't want to get out of the car. And there was an argument ensued, and finally she did get out of the car, but she got out of camera range. I don't know what happened there. You care to comment on the fact that she was allegedly killed in her in her jail cell by suicide?
Well, the trip that started her on that route started on that highway, and even before then, because there's such a thing as, a mental state. Okay, everything starts with the mind. What is the mental state of a white person with a badge and a gun who pulls you over. You better start thinking about that before you open your mouth and say anything. Not what you're thinking about. You got to thinking about what that person is thinking about who's approaching your car in that rear view mirror and walking up to you and say, "Can I see your license and registration, please?" You might be listening to the voice of sudden death. And in the system of white supremacy, that might not be a police officer. That might be a person who is pretending to be a police officer.
A race soldier.
That person might be a race soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, you may be looking in the face of sudden death, and chances are you are. You're going to be dead in about 10 minutes. You just don't know it. Because that plan was made before you were even pulled over. All right? So you act like you're a captured a soldier in enemy territory, and you act accordingly. You have no rights. Don't start talking about your rights. Period. You're looking at sudden death, whether you realize it or not. You're not going to see anybody tomorrow. In 10 minutes, you're going to be dead. Every black person on the planet should think like that. Should think like that. Get that in your head before you put anything else in there.
So are you saying it's her fault?
I'm saying that's the way I always look at it.
Mm-hmm.
If I see some lights in my rearview mirror, I'm saying, oh boy, I am in serious trouble. I don't care if I'm just being pulled over because they're just making routine checks on, because they heard that, that there was a suspicious car in the neighborhood and all like that. I don't know what the reason is, but I assume that I am going to be dead in 10 minutes or less. I make that assumption myself right now, every day that I'm breathing.
What
turns out that it's, a black officer or a white officer that comes up, even a rookie white officer, what the so-called. And he comes up and says, "Get out of the car." Without saying anything else. Get out of the car. Just like that.
So are you saying that it's her fault for not following?
I'm going to get out of that car.
Okay.
No, the fault is I have to remember where I am. I am a captured enemy of the state, of the system of white supremacy.
Okay.
All right? I'm in captivity already. Now, in that captivity, I assume that anybody wearing a badge and a gun who is white, particularly, may be a race soldier in a system of white supremacy. And I act accordingly. I act the same way that someone in World War II and what they call the death camps and whatnot, when they approach by what they call an SS officer, highly decorated, wearing an iron cross. We've seen some of the movies about that, like Schindler's List. You act accordingly. Hey, I might be looking at an SS officer.
Okay.
A highly decorated SS officer. Now, anybody who knows a little bit about World War II in the German army, they had something called the SS officers, which means these people are no nonsense. They'll put a bullet in your head in a minute about you opening your mouth, about saying anything, period, even if it's the correct thing to say. Okay? So you have to look at it exactly that same way.
Okay.
Go and look at some of these movies and get an example of what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then think of yourself as being in that same exact situation, because you just might be.
You just might be. Okay, we have a question from Terrence. He says, "Hello, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. I work around a lot of suspected white supremacists, and I interact with some as customers also. They are in a habit of putting their hands on their hips when they talk to me. They like to touch my arm and or shoulder when they shake my hand. I do not like either. How do I handle those situations in the future codified?"
Now, walk through that again.
He says that he interacts with some white supremacists as co-workers.
Suspected white supremacists.
Okay, well, I'm just reading what he said.
What he's saying,
yeah,
right.
okay. And also as customers, he said they are in a habit of putting their hands on their hips when they talk to me. They like to touch my arm and or shoulder when they shake my hand. I do not like either. How do I handle those situations in the future codified?
Well, following the logic, you're looking at, in the system of white supremacy, you're looking at a person who has absolute authority over you. Okay? So you act accordingly. I mean, you're courteous. Now, you might just slip their hand, or your shoulder away from their hand. I mean, or something like that. That's not prohibited. I mean, if you don't like being touched, and as far as them putting their hands on their hips, I mean, they can do anything they want to. They can stand on their heads. That shouldn't bother you at all. Whatever their body language is, you have nothing to do with that. I mean, they can hands on hips, hands on the top of their head, hands in their pockets. They can, but if they put their hands on you, then if their hand is on your shoulder, see, that's one specific act, then you just kind of stand back so that the hands will slip off your shoulder. And if they approach you again and put their hands on your shoulder, you just keep doing the same thing. I mean, and so you all just go around in a circle because he's trying to reach your shoulder and you keep moving your shoulder. That's all that is. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to make any statements because the statements won't work for you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
See, so that's just the way it is. But you're indicating by your body language that I don't like to be touched in that way. Now, if the person extends their hand to shake your hand, that's up to you, whether or not you want to shake the person's hand. See, I shake people's hands, so, white people, black people, and whatnot, because that's supposed to be a traditional sign of courtesy.
Yes, sir.
Or agreement on something. So I do that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But the hand on shoulder, if I didn't appreciate anything like that, I would just kind of move my body away so that the hand slips off the shoulder. And if they come forward again to put the hand on the shoulder, I just slip my body away again. Maybe about the third or fourth or fifth or 15th time, maybe they might get the message that the hand on shoulder is not necessary.
Oh, okay. The next one says, Mr. Fuller, my daughter purchased your book and your word guide recently. The return label on the book reads NFJ Productions, 905 6th Street Southwest, Suite 206, Washington, D.C. I've heard you mention that some people are using your name, Mr. Fuller's name, for their particular interest in asking for donations. My question is the above-mentioned address affiliated with Mr. Fuller's books at the producejustice.com website?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Because when you go to the website, producejustice.com, that's what you will see.
Okay.
Right.
And then she says, as directed, my daughter says that she ordered the book from the site, and I received the book today at my post box. She said, I also noticed on the talktainment.com radio site homepage under the featured show host prompt box, Mr. Fuller's first name is misspelled. And, and I thought that it should be brought to your attention. Okay, well, we have to look at that and see. I'm very glad, though, that she got the book. Well, how about that? We got to get ready to go to the break there, and I'll ask a question on the other side. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Check us out on WCRS FM 98.3 Wednesdays and Sunday evenings. Blogs and podcasts are available. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell phone or tablet. We go where you go, and that is radio the way it should be heard. Coming up next, we have more of your questions and maybe a couple of phone calls, all that and more on TalkTainmentRadio.com next.
TalkTainmentRadio.com is the premier internet radio platform offering 40-plus talk radio-style programs professionally produced, optimized for online distribution, featuring Columbus, Ohio on-air personalities. TalkTainmentRadio.com offers listeners diverse programming options covering topics such as arts and culture, love, life and relationships, technology, religion, paranormal activities, local and national politics, women's issues, alongside health and wellness. Listeners can access their favorite TalkTainmentRadio.com programs free of cost through the website. Download the TTR app to your cell phone and you can take us wherever you go. We have programs on demand to fit your schedule through our podcast. The address is TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Hello, I'm Lisa Stockdale from Senior Agenda, and I would like to encourage you to visit the Worthington Retirement Community here in Central Ohio. I've had the privilege of working closely with the staff and residents over at the Worthington for the past couple of years, and I can promise you they make a wonderful community. If you or a loved one are considering retirement living, you'll want to pay them a visit before you make your next move. When you choose to join the Worthington, you'll gain the peace of mind that comes from knowing that their independent retirement lifestyle simplifies your retirement living. They take care of the cooking, shopping, and cleaning so that you can focus on the things that are truly important to you. Plan to visit the Worthington today. They're conveniently located at 1201 Riva Ridge Boulevard in Gahanna, Ohio. You can call ahead to schedule a tour at 614-933-8640 or just stop in. Be sure to tell them Lisa sent you and enjoy your retirement living.
The Glory Soul Food Cafe, a taste of Southern classic, located at 3350 Allegheny Avenue in Columbus, Ohio. They've got everything you need. The famous LaGlory burger, chicken and waffles, shrimp and grits, walleye, perch, and whiting, and fish dinners, all Southern style food.
Oh boy, what good eating!
LaGlory Soul Food Cafe, a taste of Southern classic, located at 3350 Allegheny Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. Be sure to tell them that All in Our Family sent you, and you will receive an extra side dish with each meal. LaGlory Soul Food Cafe, a taste of Southern classic, located at 3350 Allegheny Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. For carry-out, call 614-237-5844. Get the menu at LaGlory'sCafe.com. Open 7 days a week.
For the best eating in town, LaGlory.
This show, A Conversation with Dawn Karima, has been nominated for an Indigenous Music Award, which is just such a great honor. Take a minute and please vote at AboriginalPeoplesChoice.com or Indigenous Music Awards. You can just find it on Google. For this show, A Conversation with Dawn Karima, and my CD, The Stars of Heaven, for Best Gospel, and this show for Best Radio Program. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody. Stop by and vote and tell them this is where great things happen.
Hey guys, let's play some video games.
This new dad plays video games with his sons, but the challenge feels like he's lifting a metric ton.
So many buttons.
His avatar just stares at the walls, twists and turns and somehow falls.
Help me.
He's tangled up in the controller's cords.
I just don't understand this crazy digital world.
Crazy, crazy digital world. Zeros and ones. But the love from his kids is totally apparent. Ooh. See, you don't have to be perfect to be the perfect parent.
Should have just played catch. You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of siblings in foster care will take you just as you are. For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
It may be hard to believe, but people just like you are already saving money. FeedThePig.org makes it easy. Their simple savings plan teaches you how to start saving without going overboard. So you don't need to sell all your belongings and live in a commune.
These dungarees belong to all of us now, Tom.
You don't need to get a second job as a stuntman.
We need a new stuntman!
You just need FeedThePig.org. Don't get left behind. Get tips and tools at FeedThePig.org. Brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
This is a test to find out if you know it all when it comes to children. Name one of the leading killers of U.S. children age 1 to 13. What's the best way to protect children in a car crash? At what age and size should a child start using a booster seat?
Don't assume you know it all when it comes to car seats for your child. Go to safercar.gov/the-right-seat and know for sure. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Go ahead. Make my day.
You got the power.
All righty, welcome back to a second slice of the action. TalkTainmentradio.com, the world's greatest radio, and that is radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, and this is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., the author of the United Compensatory Code System concept. Yes, sir, a textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism and white supremacy. And you can get that publication if you go to the website, which is at producejustice.com. And on the website will be some information that you will need and that you can follow. And also for purchase, there's an additional word guide that you can get to know how to decipher the words or know what to say. I think I covered it all. Did I cover it all, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All righty. Get in contact with the show at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. All righty. Let's take some calls here. Who's up first there, Galen? Line number one. Okay. Line number one. You are now on the air with Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
You speaking to me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. I want to make a quick comment and ask Mr. Fuller a question. I want to tell you I really enjoy you all, and I really enjoy Mr. Fuller. I learned so much from him. We have two types of Caucasian psychopaths in this country and in the world. Now, we have the Caucasian psychopath who gets his kicks from killing, brutalizing, lynching people, cutting off their genitals, shooting down children. And we have the Caucasian psychopath who had world ambition. And he used the other psychopath for his aim. Now, I told you and Mr. Fuller, we're in the process of being exterminated. When you're in the process of being exterminated, whatever else you think is important doesn't really matter. Because once you exterminate it, all that other stuff, it just goes to the side. Now, extermination is a process. And in understanding extermination is a process. We are in the process of being exterminated with an all-out slaughter of our people on the horizon.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Now, Brother Fuller, outside of trying to escape out of here, I do not see these psychopaths being defeated or deterred. After all, you can't change a psychopath. You either have to lock him up or you have to put him away. You cannot change him.
Okay.
So I don't see no change coming here.
What's your question, sir?
Oh, I'd like to know what Mr. Fuller think about what I said about I do not see these psychopaths being defeated in their homeland. If you have the opportunity or if you are able to escape out of here, you need to try to get out of here and get your children out of here.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Fuller, you care to respond to that?
Well, I'll just say what the compensatory code says for me to say. The gentleman has presented some information about race and racism and counter-racism. So you take that into account. I mean, anybody who's listening, he made a series of statements, and he made some conclusions. And so you think about all of the statements that he made, and think about the conclusions he's come to, and then evaluate it for what you think is worth, and then act accordingly. That's what I'm required to say. And the reason for this is I'm not a judge of what somebody else's proposals are. I can only listen and take that into account and try to think about what I can do with that information, because that's what I recommend that everybody does, and for a very logical reason. No one yet has solved the race problem. So the only experts on racism are the people who practice racism, the white supremacists themselves. There's no such thing as a black expert on racism, including Neely Fuller. Why? Because to be an expert, I would know what the solution is, and I'm only trying to find the solution. So trying to find solutions is not the same thing as having made the solution.
Okay. All righty. Rodney writes, Mr. Fuller, you responded to a question that was very helpful. I just wanted to share a little bit about myself. I am a 38-year-old brown male who has gotten trapped in the system with 2 drug charges. I did not serve prison time, but jail time. I abided by the law and paid my restitution fees and served 18 months probation. I have since enrolled in a college at a HBCU here in Durham, North Carolina, where I reside today. My major is social work, and I label myself a problem solver thanks to Mr. Fuller sharing knowledge on white supremacy. I will continue to be the best person that God has made me to be and utilize the tools to help solve the issues that have plagued non-whites for so long. I will leave with this famous quote of Mr. Neely Fuller's, "I'm still learning." You care to respond to that, Mr. Fuller?
Well, I would hear again. That's what he has chosen to do, and the criteria for I say, according to logic, for every black person on the planet, try to do the most constructive thing that you possibly can do with every situation that you're in. Always think, what's the most constructive thing that I can do? Because you got 2 choices, either constructive or non-constructive, as each minute of the day. And keep these other 2 words in mind, problem solving. What is the best way to go about solving this particular problem that I'm looking at right now? And chances are, black people have a whole bunch of problems throughout each and every day. If you're on this planet, most likely you're a black person who has problems, or you got problems even that you may not recognize that you have. But the problems that you can recognize that you have, stop and think, now what is the absolute best way to go about solving this particular problem that I have right this minute? Because out of all the ways to solve problems, it might be maybe 12, 15 ways to solve a particular problem. The key is, the logical way is, stop and think. You always want to stop and think first, because everything comes from thought. And think about, now, there are 12 ways to solve this particular problem that I can think of at this moment. Now, what is the best way out of that 12? Now, it may not even wind up solving the problem, but it's the best that you can come up with at the moment. That's the way to always think. Be in a problem-solving mode. And I think that will do a whole lot toward getting black people in a fast-forward way of getting something done the way it should be done. Because we're kind of notorious collectively, according to all the records and all the evidence, for acting without thinking.
Okay.
And thinking what? About what's the best way, the most constructive way, even to respond to someone who's talking to you in a certain manner that you disapprove of.
Yes, sir.
Always stop and think before you say anything. What is the best way for me to respond to what is being said to me right this minute.
Okay. You're listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and you're listening to it exclusively on TalkTamitRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. Let's go to the phone lines, and line number 2. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Yes, good morning. My name is Tyreek from the Bronx.
Hey, Tyreek.
Hello. I'd like to say, I usually like to hear the opinion of the last caller. His thoughts and views are usually unique, and sometimes he makes valid points. But my question to Mr. Fuller is, I hear him use the term race soldier and say that we are basically prisoners or captives of war. And I also heard him mention one time that soldiers are supposed to be a necessary evil. So due to the increasing media attention of the mass amount of black people being slaughtered, do you think that it would be necessary for black people to have some force to defend them? Or do you think that black people are going to start killing more white people due to the increasing media coverage of the slaughter?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Well, since that word killing has been brought up, I usually on the air do not talk about killing in depth or even in self-defense and all like that. I outlined that in the textbook, and the reason I point to the textbook is not just to sell the textbook. It's because when you start talking about killing, you have to be careful, and you have to be very precise. Even when you're killing in self-defense, you want to be clearly understood, word for word, and you definitely want to have the philosophical context from which killing should be done and or shouldn't be done. You want that to be very, 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 very distinct. When you start talking about anybody killing anybody, for whatever reason, it shouldn't be one thing in particular, any kind of confusion. There shouldn't be any kind of confusion about when someone is supposed to be killed, regardless of who that someone is and what the circumstances are. All of the circumstances should be very precise, and everything right down to the crossing every T and dotting every I of how that should transpire and how it should not transpire when you're talking about people killing people.
Okay.
You're talking about something that is extremely important.
Okay.
So even in talking about self-defense, now I do believe in self-defense because I'm supposed to. All animals, all creatures are doing what they're supposed to do in self-defense when it's done for the correct reasons. Sometimes you don't have a real reason to defend yourself when you put yourself in a position where you should be eliminating yourself with the kind of trouble you're causing. And that is a part of the code, too.
Okay. Brother Tariq, what was it, the second part of your question?
I believe he answered it.
Okay.
Basically, did he see that black people would eventually begin to kill white people due to the increasing media coverage of, like, the black lady who they supposedly said that she committed suicide in the prison cell.
Yeah.
But usually I see on the news they have one black person who usually would say that it is a race issue. Then they will have another black person who is fairly light-skinned saying that we don't have enough evidence to say this. Basically, they want to make them play both sides of the fence. And then they'll have a third party, usually a white person or suspected white supremacist, advocating for the race soldier. And I actually saw this then I was watching, actually walking in the living room watching, and they had this same scenario.
Okay.
And you always seen this played out. So I was basically asking Mr. Fuller, does he see, since this is being, imprinted in black minds all across the media, whether it be social media or the news or CNN, NBC, do you think that black people are going to get frustrated and start to, basically revolt and start killing white people?
Okay. Thank you for your call.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Fuller?
You never do anything out of frustration, because frustration, the next step out of frustration is confusion. And then out of confusion and frustration and chaos, you get anger. People become angry when some things are chaotic, when things are frustrating, when things are confusing. Now, what's the antidote for confusion? Clarity. Clarity is the antidote for confusion. So that's why I said what I said a while ago about being approached by a suspected race soldier.
Mm-hmm.
You have clarity in your mind about what this situation is. You shouldn't get frustrated. You shouldn't go into some kind of what you call the ghetto procedure, which is black people have a ghetto procedure for handling what you call hostile incidents. And you shouldn't go into that at all. It works among black people sometimes. I mean, to start talking about what you believe and what you think and what you think about the person who is talking to you and how that person should be talking to you. And like black people sometimes say, hey, man, you're going to respect me as a man. I'm going to do a job on you and all like that.
Yes,
that's the ghetto reaction. It works very well sometimes with black people. When you're dealing with a racial situation, all of that is supposed to go out of the window instantly.
Yes, sir.
You don't resort to that at all. Because, like I said, going back to the movie Schindler's List, you look at this suspected race soldier like I'm looking at an SS officer, and this is World War II, and I am in a death camp, and I'm going to start acting like I'm talking to homeboy. I am not talking to homeboy, and that's not homeboy talking to me. This is an altogether a monumental different situation altogether. This is nothing similar to the scenario that I think that I'm in. Nothing. I'm in another world altogether, and you better act like it.
See, NBC News has released a statement saying that, or asking a question, was the Sandra Bland traffic stop video edited? The Texas Department of Public Safety authorities said late Tuesday that they were looking into alleged edits to a 52-minute dash cam video of the traffic stop and arrest of Sandra Bland, who died in a jail cell 3 days after her arrest. Interesting. Let's go to the phone lines. You're now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Yes, can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening. Good morning, excuse me, Mr. Bobby and Dr. Fuller. I have a question pertaining to the universal language. According to Mr. Fuller's book, the universal language applies to any condition of death or suffering and the ability to inflict death and suffering. Now, at the beginning of his textbook, he mentions that we should aspire to be universal man and universal woman, who produce justice. And my question is, how does the universal language, produce justice, truth, and correctness, and be associated with death and suffering at the same time?
Well, universal language is considered making death. See, one thing that everybody understands, or should understand, and most people do, is the threat or the actuality of somebody being killed, of somebody no longer breathing. That's a universal language. I mean, even the most primitive of people that don't speak the same language in any way, when they see blood being shed, everybody understands that. This is why a person, who doesn't know much of anything at all can say, well, wait a minute. Everybody's speaking a different language here, and everybody's arguing about this, and everybody's arguing about that. And it's like the old illustration about the preacher in church when people got to arguing about religion and whatnot. There's an old joke that may not be a joke, that the preacher got frustrated with everybody in the church who was disagreeing with each other about what the Bible meant and what this meant and what that meant. So the preacher reached down up under the pulpit and pulled out a .45 revolver and said, damn it to hell, the argument's all over.
Wow. Okay.
Which means everybody in there understood that, because here is the preacher who has gotten so frustrated with all of the different arguments about what the Bible meant, and he says, well, I'll tell you what, I think I can settle some of these arguments by opening fire on this congregation. How about that?
Wow. I guess it
That's
gives
what you call the universal language.
It gives a whole new meaning to the phrase, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Okay, before I let you go, is there any other question you want to ask quickly?
Yes.
Quickly.
So with that being said, would you say that understanding the universal language should be like our main key point, as colored people, black people, to try to focus on getting as precise and getting as much clarity as possible for what the universal language is?
Okay.
Because, we try to carry ourselves, as militant, but then at the end of the day, we just be talking about it. So when we actually do see real blood and killing, all of a sudden things get serious, and we don't want to be a part of that. So how do we handle that, and try to understand the universal language?
Okay.
Well, we encapsulate the entire business of the universal language within an entire code of behavior. What black people do not have is a code of behavior that makes sense. What we call black culture has so far been a failure at doing what? The two words that we should be very familiar with by now: problem solving. Oh, we do a whole lot of stuff. We brag about black culture. We have Black History Month and all like that. But we need to examine every part of what we call black culture, whatever that means, because according to logic, culture is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's all any culture is. What you do when. What you do whenever you're doing it. That's a part of your culture. If you're cursing somebody out and you're a black person doing it, that's black culture. Why? Because there's a black person doing it. You can't. Culture is not something that's over there in the desert somewhere up under the pyramids. I mean, that's not culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a pyramid in the desert. Culture is what you do at the moment that you are doing it.
Okay.
If you're helping somebody do something constructive, helping them to build a house or fix the back porch or something like that, and you're a black person doing it, that is black culture at that moment.
At that particular moment. Okay, here it says prosecutors are reviewing the fatal shooting of an unarmed black man by the University of Cincinnati police officer who had pulled the driver over for having a missing front license plate. This is according to authorities down in Cincinnati. Samuel Dubose, 43, was shot once in the head following a brief struggle as he sat behind the wheel of his car Sunday night. University and city police indicated that. The officer, Ray Tensing, who is white, was placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. The deadly shooting occurred amidst the national conversation of race and policing, with critics alleging that black suspects are more likely to have force used against them during encounters with police. Do you care to respond to that, Mr. Fuller?
Yes. I'm going to say about all of these, what you call law enforcement stops of black people, just what I've said on this program consistently. And I'm going to add something else that I've said consistently, going back to the Trayvon Martin. On this program, I've said expect it to happen again over and over and over and over. And
Yes.
these are the words that I use.
You did.
If you play some of the recordings back, going back to the Trayvon Martin thing, I said it's going to continue to happen. Why? Because we don't learn anything from these events. And the main thing we're supposed to learn, even if we wind up getting shot for just sitting there saying nothing, but we have to go into ghetto mode.
Which is?
Ghetto mode is escalating the situation leading toward, because the white supremacists, the race soldiers, are very aware of the ghetto mode. And they love to push those buttons that will take you right where they want you to go. See what I mean?
Yes, sir.
They
Well,
want this recorded on camera. I mean, hey, I want this black person to go into ghetto mode. I want him to start talking to me like he's talking to homeboy, because that's what we are used to doing.
Yes.
We've been doing that since the 7th grade. See, we go into ghetto mode, and the white supremacists are saying, hey, I'm going into white supremacist mode.
well, we've come to the close of the program, so talktameradio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. Talktainmentradio.com.